if you look on the back by the water, there are our handouts. Okay. The name Alison Bechdel may be familiar to you from her recent graphic memoir, Fun Home, which Time magazine called the single best book of 2006. Not the single best graphic novel, but the single best book. But Bechdel was already well known by lefties and lesbians alike for her weekly comic strip, which ran in over 50 alternative newspapers in the US, UK, and Canada. So the Essential Dykes to Watch Out For collects the best work from 25 years of this strip, chronicling the lives, loves, and politics of a mostly lesbian countercultural collective of friends living in a mid-sized American city that may or may not be Minneapolis. So, from a kilt-wearing, there he is, a kilt-wearing secular Jewish vegetarian stay-at-home father to a plus-sized dreadlocked African-American lesbian independent bookstore owner, Bechdel's characters truly represent archetypes within the lefty community. Now, I do know people like that. Okay. If you look at this strip here, here's that stay-at-home vegetarian father inadvertently having just eaten a steak, and he's, I just finished off that seitan on the top shelf of the fridge, delicious. If you don't know seitan, that's a meat substitute. And delicious seitan. So what's important about this comic book, other than the fact that this is a fabulous soap opera to follow, you really grow with the characters, and you can see Bechdel's art from the original, when she started out in 1983, her artwork definitely grows as well. So aside from the Victorian melodrama of this, they're really a vehicle for her very left-leaning politics, but at the same time, she's making fun of the left community as much as she's skewering the right. So it's an important work to your collection. Okay. All right. So I would definitely, I wouldn't put the Bechdel in, a lot of libraries automatically just put the graphic novels in YA. Don't do that with this one. Okay, there are sex scenes in there, which, aren't like pornographic, but they're definitely graphic, right? So don't put that one in YA. And this Children of the Sea is YA, although it's for older teens. Though I'm not clear why. There's only 2 out in the series now. The 3rd one's coming out soon, or maybe it just came out. I'm still not clear why it's older teen as opposed to younger teen, but we may find out continuing through. Okay, so this is exquisitely drawn. This manga series centers around these 2 boys here who made their way to an aquarium in Tokyo where they're being raised, which is slightly better being raised by these scientists than the manatees, okay? The Japanese call them dugongs, the ocean creatures, they're mammals, they kind of look like cows and live in the seaweed. Okay, they're 2 of several children having been discovered throughout the world that have been raised by manatees. And they all seem to be converging together, and there's a connection to a mysterious disappearance of fish across the oceans and aquariums. And the fish that disappear are covered with a galaxy of stars. That seems to be the only common thread. It could be little fish disappearing from the aquariums, or these gigantic whale sharks disappearing from the ocean. So there seems to be some kind of connection to these mysterious boys and the fish and the disappearances. The boys are very fragile, having grown in the water until they're 10 or 11 years old. They need to keep wetting themselves down to stay healthy, or else they'll overheat. And the boys also glow. When you see them in the sunlight, they're sparkly, kind of like the vampires in Twilight. The scientists, I would say, are not great caretakers of these boys. They're putting the boys through lots of experiments trying to figure out their biology and the connection to these fish, having them do some pretty heavy-duty deep diving experience to see, oh look, the boys don't have to breathe as often as regular humans. Well, you've just put a kid, much further down below the water than is probably healthy for him. So the only person who really seems to have their best interests at heart, you can see her legs right there, is the daughter of one of the scientists who also hears the call of these mysterious fish. So I would highly recommend this. It's beautiful. If you're still on the fence, it's available as a web comic, and we'll be posting the link to that on our Square 2 name, social networking. Okay, so Harvey Pekar. I was horrified when I realized we had neglected Harvey Pekar for the last 2 years. You may recognize the name Harvey Pekar, recognize his face from his David Letterman interviews in the 1980s and 90s, or you may have seen the biographical movie American Splendor. Reading a Harvey Pekar comic is spending time with your favorite uncle who's a curmudgeon. And you're going to hear a litany of everybody who's been nasty to your uncle for the last 3 months. And great stories like that, or stories of unexpected kindness. Pekar himself was a humble file clerk at a veterans hospital in Cleveland, and he began writing a self-published series in 1976. American Splendor, what is it? Autobiographical shorts that Harvey writes the stories, but they're drawn by some of the best illustrators in the industry, starting with Robert Crumb, whom you may know Robert Crumb from the hippie comics, the underground comics of the late 60s, early 70s. He had known Robert Crumb. They were both jazz record collectors in Cleveland before Crumb moved out to San Francisco. And Robert Crumb's drawn work, Joe Sacco, Chester Brown, and Allison Metcalf, whom I spoke of earlier. So why would such top talent be interested in drawing stories that Pekar himself says are mundane? These stories resonate deeply about the human condition. So also note that Pekar, 2 other Pekar titles were released in 2009. The Beats, which is a history of the beatniks, the poets, artists, and musicians of this movement, as well as a comic adaptation of Studs Terkel's Working. And you can also read Pekar's webcomic, The Pekar Project, online, and we'll also post that link on the Square 2 name. Okay. Oh, yeah, definitely resonating. I mean, turning a fall on his front stairs into an epic tragedy. So, okay. Adventures in cartooning. This is a J title, although my art teacher friend at a high school says that her high school